good afternoon to all very distinguished guests present here, including today's chief guest, Professor Pillai from IGNOU. Well, as per the directives, I will be restricting myself to another 10 to 12 minutes about the present school education scenario in India and the road ahead. And if certain clarification is needed, then we can talk, because I will be here up to 5 o'clock. We can discuss actually separately. Well, I must thank the VARIndia for giving me a chance to learn from this place, and thank you for calling me here. Well, starting from a note actually, if someone from the 19th century were to travel forward in time, she would find revolutionary changes in all walks of life, except classroom, where a principal at the front writing on a blackboard or reading out from the textbook, and the pupils in rows of desks taking the notes. Our traditional system of education continue to reinforce the things that is happening since time immemorial. Though we have created islands of excellence, many islands of excellence we have created, but I must confess, because I have seen the national scenario and the state scenario also in one of the most populous states in India, Uttar Pradesh, I must confess that overall there is a low levels of efficiency or mediocrity in school education system in India. Our traditional system of education is based on instructionism, which means that knowledge is a collection of facts and the procedures, and it has to be put into the student's empty head. Learning is confined to the prescribed syllabus and the curriculum. The learners are supposed to memorize the facts and carry out the procedures without understanding why and the how. Our typical school is a place with boundaries and cell-like structures, fixed timetables, watertight compartment of subjects, the routine and repetitive teaching and to deliver the information, the routine and the repetitive co-curricular activities, and the assessment procedure. So the school which are supposed to make young people think have themselves ceased to think. Our traditional classrooms, they're all teacher-centered. There's so much of teacher dependency. Surface learning, passive learners. This I'm confessing after looking 30 years of my experience in school education sector. Creativity, originality, and the enterprise of learners is not encouraged. The schools have become mostly the centers of curriculum delivery rather than center of excellence. For many learners, the class is the only time in their day when they find themselves disconnected. The world today, as I've already been explained beautifully in my 2 earlier lectures, the world today is much more technologically complex and economically competitive. And instructionism is increasingly failing to educate our students to participate in this new kind of society. It's a new world order. In the knowledge economy, memorizations of facts and procedures is not enough for success. When you say that is a new world order, the students today live in a world which is very different from the one which we have all grew up in. the way we have accessed and used information has altogether changed. There is growing interdependence and interrelationship because of powerful forces of globalization. There is accelerated pace of development in the field of science and technology, and particularly in the field of biology and the information and communication technology. There's a radical transformations in the field of work and employment. When we came out from the university long back in 1972, there were 65 to 70% of employment in the organized sector and 30 to 35% employment in the unorganized sector. What is the present scenario? 94 to 95% of employment in the unorganized sector. There is a knowledge economy that revolves around creating, sharing, and using information and knowledge, cross-border learning. Now, in this scenario, these changes are impacting the minds of our students daily and also impacting our school education system. And our students cannot live in this world with unsolved problems because it's a different world order. Our students are no longer a regional players or a national players. They have to compete in a global competitive situations. And in one of the important deliberation papers that I have seen about 3 or 4 years back, they have predicted that in another 10 to 15 years time frame, most of the employment world over will be grabbed by young graduates from 2 countries, India and China, provided we churn out students with quality. And there was another report in the Hindu newspaper about a year back, which said that 70% of our graduates are simply unemployable. So these are the 2 scales, in the extreme scales that we are talking. So in the 21st century, in the new world order, besides the core skills covered by the existing curriculum of language, mathematics, science, and arts, this have to be complemented by learning and innovation skills, by technology skills, by life and career skills, so that we can build up the capacities of problem solving and decision making, creativity and critical thinking, collaborations, communications, and negotiations, intellectual curiosity, and the ability to find, structure, select, and evaluate the informations have to be built up to our students in their schooling period itself. We need to build up these enterprise skills early in their life because you know that the world is changing so fast that, and continue to update these skills because in another 10 years time frame, we may be requiring the skills which we do not even recognize today. So that's the challenge we are having. And that is why world over in the school education sector, there is a word called STEM, S-T-E-M. They're focusing on the STEM. S stands for the science, T stands for the technology, E stands for the engineering, and the M stands for the mathematics. But we need to contextualize in India's situation because India is not a country, it is a continent. There is so much of multiplicity, variety, and so much of cultural difference, the linguistic difference. I will contextualize this STEM into STLM. Yes, S stands for the science, T stands for the technology, L stands for the language. I would like to give a very important language, and M stands for the mathematics. I will call these the 4 pillars of quality education framework in the school education sector. If you can cover up this STLM, we will be covering out the 90% of the quality educations to our younger generations. Can you not focus on these 4 pillars of exclusively? You know the Dellers report, 4 pillars of Dellers report. I will just little bit modify it in today's scenario. Now, besides this STLM, we need to have a 21st century system reforms also. It needs to be appropriately supported by the 21st century system reforms, which means that integration of technology in all aspects of school life. It's not only be restricted only with the teaching learning process, not only restricted with the evaluation. All aspects of the school life, the technology has to be integrated. Of course, where there is possibility, we need to look into these four pillars, that is hardware, software, connectivity, and of course the content. So integration of technology, one aspect. Preparing teachers for change. Teaching the teachers is very critical. There's so much of resistance, so much of demotivations. The digital resources as a core toolkit for 21st century teachers. The digital resources, that has to be a core toolkit. The use of technology for designing such curricular areas as language for enhancing the skills of communication, science for enhancing the skills of inquiry, demystifying mathematics. We can start with the technology in teaching the mathematics instead of teaching them with formulas and with the equations and putting a lots of phobia amongst our students. Life skills educations, disaster management of educations for building of environmental concerns, and of course in social science also building up those projects and the activities. So we need to see that technology is used on the latest educational gases holistically and not partially. Because it's very important that we need to look into this PQRS factor while talking about the technology or the latest educational gadget. P stands for the productivity. If technology is useful, use it. Q stands for the quality. R stands for the rate. Yes, subsidized rate. If technology doesn't mean that you have to ask for a huge cost and charging from the students or the parents. And S stands for the scalability. So what is required, that the technology has to be used in a holistic manner, meaning thereby that there should be automation of our system, then facilitation, and then only transformation is a possibility. We cannot look into at one angle only. So now the question is being raised, are we ready for experiment or not? What type of experiment I am asking to you? Can we promote HOTS in our school, higher order thinking skill, not restricting ourselves only with the MOTS, more of the same, which we find very comfortable? So from MOTS to HOTS, can we have the flexible timetabling, digital resources? Can we experiment with this? Bringing better teachers to many students. If a teacher, there are very good teachers in in Mumbai or the Delhi, can't we bring them to the far-flung areas of the Northeast? Going beyond the textbooks and the prescribed syllabus. Our aim should be global destinations with local journeys. So if the answer is yes, yes, we are ready to experiment, then there are certain key small steps we need to do that. We need to end the era of routines, the repetitive stereotypes in our school education system. Continuous benchmarking. We did not stop at a particular place. Moving beyond the frontiers of explicit curriculum, institutional learning, and the time-bound knowledge acquisition. If someone is comfortable with the 3 years or 4 years time frame, why we are restricting them with only 2 years or with 1 year? Disseminate the best practices through appropriate platforms. Institutionalize teacher development. Our teachers are becoming semi-skilled. The average age of our teachers is 44 to 46. They need to travel a long, about another 20 years, but they have already become the semi-skilled. How we can institutionalize the teacher development. And technology has to be imaginatively and extensively used, not only to the teaching learning, but also to the extended learning, to our co-curricular activities, and also in the assessment procedures. So what is needed, that we need to take certain amount of risk. We fear about taking the risk. If we do not take the risk, there is every chance that we may not remain in the mainstream and we may be sidelined. There is a saying also that there is risk always changing, but the risk of failing to change is much more greater. Of course, I would like to invite the corporate sector also, the people also, under their CSR, corporate social responsibility, to help our schools to know the latest use of the latest educational gadgets and the technology. I think the corporate sector should come out in a big way as part of the CSR. Because there are lots of uncertainty prevailing in the teacher's mind also and the school minds also. So by making a good networking and a good liaisons, good linkages with the corporate sector, with the people in the NGOs and the schools in both the sector, private sector and the public sector, that we can make a big difference in the school education sector in near future.